I never imagined my own children would betray me the way they did, treating me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. What they did to me almost destroyed everything I'd worked for my entire life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It helps to know someone out there hears me, that my voice still matters. Please subscribe so others who feel invisible can share their stories too. This is what happened to me. My name is Dorothy Walsh, and for 63 years, I lived in the same house on Maple Street in a small Pennsylvania town called Riverside. It was a beautiful house, a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters, a wraparound porch where I spent summer evenings with my husband Frank, and a garden out back where I grew tomatoes, zucchini, and roses that won ribbons at the county fair. We bought that house in 1961, right after we got married, when the neighborhood was new and the trees were saplings. Over the decades, those trees grew tall and thick, their branches shading the street, their roots cracking the sidewalks. The house grew too, filled with memories, birthdays, Christmases, the echoes of children running through rooms, laughter and arguments, and the whole messy business of life. Frank died in 2019, a heart attack that took him in his sleep. One moment he was there, warm and solid beside me, and the next he was gone. We'd been married for 58 years. After his death, the house felt too big, too quiet, but I couldn't imagine leaving. Every corner held a piece of him. The kitchen table where he drank his coffee every morning, the armchair in the living room worn smooth by his weight, the garden shed where he kept his tools. Leaving would have felt like erasing him. I had 3 children. Michael, the oldest, was 56, a corporate lawyer in Philadelphia with a wife named Stephanie and 2 teenage sons I barely knew. He was always busy, always important, always wearing expensive suits and checking his phone during the rare visits he made. Claire was 53, a real estate agent in Pittsburgh, divorced twice, with a sharp tongue and an even sharper sense of what things were worth. And David, my youngest at 49, worked in finance in New York, lived in a penthouse apartment, and had a girlfriend young enough to be his daughter. They were successful, all of them. I was proud of that. I'd raised them to be independent, to work hard, to build good lives. But somewhere along the way, they'd also become strangers. After Frank died, they started calling more often, not to check on me, not to see how I was coping, but to talk about plans. Michael wanted me to sell the house and move into a retirement community. Claire kept sending me listings for condos, places with low maintenance and senior-friendly amenities. David suggested I hire a live-in nurse, someone to keep an eye on things. I don't need anyone to keep an eye on me, I told them during a conference call. They'd arranged without asking if it was a good time. I'm 79, not helpless. Mom, we're just worried, Michael said in that patient tone he used with difficult clients. You're alone in that big house. What if something happens? Then something happens, I said. I've lived here for 63 years. I'm not leaving now. Be reasonable, Claire cut in. You're not getting any younger. That house is too much for you to manage. I manage just fine. Do you? She didn't bother hiding the skepticism. When's the last time you cleaned the gutters, fixed that crack in the driveway? The place is falling apart, Mom. It's my house, I said, my voice harder now. And it's my decision. There was a pause. Then David, smooth as always, said, We're not trying to control you, Mom. We just want what's best for you. But what they wanted wasn't about me. I understood that, even if they didn't say it out loud. They wanted me somewhere convenient, somewhere manageable, somewhere that didn't require them to drive hours for a visit or worry about getting a call in the middle of the night. And maybe, somewhere in the back of their minds, they were already thinking about the house, about what it was worth, about how they'd divide it up when I was gone. I hung up on them. I didn't do it dramatically, didn't yell or slam the phone down. I just pressed the red button and set the phone on the table and went out to the garden to pull weeds. For a few months, they backed off. Or maybe they were just busy with their own lives. Either way, I had peace. I spent my days tending the garden, reading on the porch, volunteering at the local food bank. I had friends, Margaret from church, Susan next door, the Tuesday morning book club at the library. My life wasn't empty. It was quiet, yes, but it was mine. In November of 2023, everything changed. I woke up one morning feeling dizzy. Not terribly so, just enough to make me sit down on the edge of the bed and wait for the room to stop tilting. I thought maybe I'd stood up too fast, that I needed to drink more water. But when I tried to stand again, my legs felt weak, unsteady. I made it to the kitchen, holding onto walls and furniture, and sat down at the table, breathing hard. By afternoon, the dizziness was worse. I called my doctor, a kind man named Dr. Patterson, who'd been treating me for 20 years, and he told me to come in immediately. Susan drove me. At the office, they ran tests, took my blood pressure, asked 100 questions. Dr. Patterson's face was serious when he told me I'd had a minor stroke. "How minor?" I asked. "Minor enough that you're talking to me," he said. "But it's a warning, Dorothy. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. You need medication, monitoring, and you need to take this seriously." He prescribed pills, scheduled follow-up appointments, gave me a list of symptoms to watch for. Susan drove me home and insisted on staying the night, sleeping in the guest room, checking on me every few hours like I was a child. I appreciated it, but I also hated it, hated feeling fragile, hated needing help. I didn't tell my children right away. I knew what would happen if I did. But Dr. Patterson, following protocol, contacted my emergency contacts. Michael called 3 hours later, his voice tight with anger. "Why didn't you tell us?" he demanded. "Because I'm fine," I said. "It was minor. I'm on medication. It's handled." "You had a stroke, Mom. You could have died." "But I didn't. That's not the point." He took a breath, and I could hear him trying to control his temper. "We need to talk, all of us, this weekend. I'm driving up, and I'll call Claire and David." "Michael, this isn't a request." He hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling the walls of my life closing in. They descended on me that Saturday, like a coordinated invasion. Michael arrived first, pulling into the driveway in his black Lexus, Stephanie beside him looking polished and uncomfortable. Claire showed up an hour later in a rental car, hair blown out, makeup perfect, carrying a leather portfolio like she was about to close a deal. David flew in from New York and took an Uber from the airport, arriving last in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. We sat in the living room, me in Frank's old armchair, them on the couch and chairs they'd grown up with, and it felt like an ambush. "Mom," Michael started, leaning forward with his hands clasped. "We've been talking, and we think it's time to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" I asked, though I already knew. "You can't live alone anymore," Claire said bluntly. "Not after a stroke. It's not safe." "I'm on medication. I'm being monitored. I'm perfectly safe." "What if it happens again?" David asked. "What if you fall and no one finds you for hours, days? I have friends. I have neighbors." "That's not enough," Michael said. "You need professional care." I looked at the three of them, these strangers who used to be my children, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "What are you saying?" Michael exchanged a glance with Claire, some silent communication I wasn't part of. Then he pulled out a brochure from his briefcase and handed it to me. "We found a place, Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's about 40 minutes from here, close enough for us to visit, and they have excellent medical staff." I looked at the brochure. glossy photos of smiling old people playing cards, eating meals in a bright cafeteria, sitting in a manicured courtyard. It looked like a prison dressed up with flowers. "I'm not going to a nursing home," I said. "It's not a nursing home, it's assisted living," Stephanie chimed in, her voice gentle, like she was trying to soften the blow. "It's really lovely, Dorothy. We toured it last week. Private rooms, activities, social opportunities." "I have a home," I interrupted, looking at Michael. "This home. I'm not leaving it." "Mom, be reasonable," Claire said. "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly. You're the ones who aren't listening." "We're trying to help you," David said. "No, you're trying to control me." The room went silent. Michael's jaw tightened. Claire crossed her arms. David looked away, uncomfortable. "This house is too much for you," Michael said finally. "Even before the stroke, it was too much. You can't keep up with the maintenance, the yard work, So, hire someone to help me," I said. "A housekeeper, a gardener. I have money saved. I can afford it." "It's not just about affording it," Claire said. "It's about safety, about making smart decisions." "And you think taking my home away from me is a smart decision?" "We think," Michael said slowly, carefully, "that selling the house and moving you into a care facility is what's best for everyone." There it was, selling the house. I stared at him, this son I'd raised, this man I'd sacrificed for, and saw a stranger. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom, get out of my house." They tried to argue, to reason, to persuade, but I stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. Eventually they left, filing out one by one, Michael's face red with frustration, Claire shaking her head like I was a stubborn child, David avoiding my eyes. I closed the door behind them and locked it. Then I went to the kitchen, sat down at Frank's table, and cried. Over the next few weeks, they tried different tactics: phone calls, emails, visits from Stephanie playing good cop. Michael sent me articles about elderly people who died alone in their homes. Claire forwarded real estate listings with subject lines like, "Just look at this one, Mom." David called and tried to appeal to my emotions, saying they loved me, that they were scared for me. But I held firm. This was my house, my life, my decision. In January, Michael showed up unannounced with a woman I didn't know. She was in her 50s, wearing a gray suit, carrying a briefcase. Michael introduced her as Dr. Sandra Liu, a geriatric psychiatrist. "I didn't ask for a psychiatrist," I said, not inviting them past the entryway. "I know, Mom, but I thought it might help to talk to someone objective," Michael said. "Someone who can assess your situation professionally." "My situation is fine." "Please," he said, and there was something desperate in his voice. "Just talk to her, for me." Against my better judgment, I let them in. Dr. Liu asked me questions about my daily routine, my health, my memory, how I managed tasks like cooking and paying bills. I answered truthfully, calmly, making it clear I was perfectly competent. She took notes, nodded, asked follow-up questions. When she left, Michael stayed behind. "She's going to write up a report," he said. "For what?" "For the court." I stared at him. "The court?" "We're filing for guardianship, Mom. If you won't make the right decision, we'll have to make it for you." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. "You're taking me to court?" "We're trying to protect you. You're trying to control me. Call it what you want, but we're not going to stand by and watch you hurt yourself out of stubbornness." He left. I sat down on the couch, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. Guardianship. They were going to take away my rights, declare me incompetent, make my decisions for me. I called a lawyer the next day. His name was Martin Beck, a man in his 70s with a kind face and a reputation for handling elder law cases. I explained the situation, and he listened without interrupting. "Do you have medical documentation showing you're competent?" he asked. "I can get some. My doctor will vouch for me." "Good, we'll need that. But Dorothy, I have to be honest with you. Guardianship cases are hard to fight, especially when there's documented medical issues like a stroke. Your children will argue that you're a danger to yourself, and if they can get a psychiatrist to back them up." "Dr. Liu seemed fair," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "Maybe, but she's being paid by your son. That creates a bias, whether she intends it or not." "So, what do I do?" "We fight," he said simply. "We present evidence that you're capable, competent, and entitled to make your own decisions. But you need to prepare yourself. This is going to be ugly." He was right. The court date was set for March. In the weeks leading up to it, my children escalated their campaign. Michael hired a private investigator who followed me around town, documenting every stumble, every moment of confusion, every time I forgot where I parked my car. Claire spread rumors through the neighborhood, telling anyone who would listen that I was losing my mind, that I was a danger to myself. David called my bank and tried to get information about my accounts, claiming he was worried I was being scammed. I felt like I was under siege. Every day brought a new humiliation, a new invasion of my privacy. Friends started looking at me with pity. Neighbors avoided me. At the grocery store, the cashier asked if I needed help carrying my bags, and I wanted to scream that I was fine, that I wasn't some fragile, broken thing. Dr. Patterson wrote a letter on my behalf, stating that I was cognitively intact, capable of managing my own affairs, and that my stroke had been minor with no lasting effects. Martin Beck assembled a case, collecting evidence of my competence, bank statements showing I paid my bills on time, testimony from friends, records of my volunteer work. But Michael had money, and money bought things like expert witnesses and psychiatrists who wrote reports full of words like cognitive decline and diminished capacity. Dr. Liu's report was particularly damaging. She concluded that while I showed no signs of dementia, my recent stroke combined with my age and living situation put me at significant risk, and that assisted living would be in my best interest. The hearing was held in a small courtroom in the county courthouse. I sat at a table with Martin Beck, wearing my best dress, my hands folded in my lap. Across the aisle, Michael, Claire, and David sat with their lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in a red suit who looked like she ate people like me for breakfast. The judge was a man in his early 60s, tired-looking, with reading glasses perched on his nose. He reviewed the documents, asked a few questions, listened to testimony. Dr. Patterson spoke on my behalf, as did Margaret from church. Michael's lawyer called Dr. Liu, who repeated her findings in calm, clinical language. And then Michael took the stand. He talked about finding me confused, about the condition of the house, about his fears that I would hurt myself. He cried, actual tears streaming down his face, his voice breaking as he said, "I just want my mother to be safe." I wanted to stand up and call him a liar. I wanted to tell the judge that this wasn't about safety, it was about control, about money, about the house they all wanted to sell. But Martin Beck had warned me to stay calm, to let him handle it. In the end, the judge ruled in their favor. Partial guardianship, he called it. Michael was appointed as my guardian, with authority over my medical and financial decisions. I could still live independently, but only under supervision. Any major decisions, selling property, changing doctors, moving, required Michael's approval. I sat there, numb, as the judge signed the papers. I'd lost my rights, my autonomy, my control over my own life, gone. Martin Beck appealed, but the process would take months, maybe years. In the meantime, the guardianship stood. Michael wasted no time. Within a week, he'd arranged for a home health aide to visit me 3 times a week, a woman named Patty, who was kind enough but whose presence felt like surveillance. He took over my bank accounts, giving me an allowance like I was a child. He scheduled appointments with specialists I didn't need, filled my kitchen with pill organizers and medical equipment, and he started talking about selling the house. "Not right away," he said during one of his visits, walking through the rooms with a critical eye. "But we need to think about it, Mom. This place is worth a lot of money that could pay for better care, a nicer facility." "I don't want a facility," I said. "I want to stay here." "We'll see." In April, Claire showed up with a realtor. I refused to let them in, stood on my porch and told them to leave. Claire argued, said she was just getting an estimate, that it was part of the estate planning. The realtor, a young man with slicked back hair and a clipboard, smiled at me like I was senile. "Mrs. Walsh, I promise we're just here to help," he said. "I didn't ask for your help." But they didn't need my permission anymore. Michael had the legals, authority to make these decisions. They toured the house while I sat in the garden, refusing to participate, my hands shaking with rage. That evening, Susan came over. She found me on the porch, staring at nothing. "Dorothy," she said gently, sitting beside me. "What's going on?" I told her everything, the guardianship, the court case, the realtor. She listened, her face growing more horrified with each detail. "They can't do this," she said. "They already have." "Then fight harder, get a different lawyer, appeal the ruling, go to the media if you have to." "I'm tired, Susan." My voice cracked. "I'm so tired of fighting." She put her arm around me, and I leaned into her, this friend who'd been my neighbor for 30 years, and let myself cry. In May, Michael presented me with papers, a contract to sell the house, listing price set at $750,000. He'd already accepted an offer from a young couple with 2 kids, pending inspection. "I'm not signing," I said. "You don't have to," Michael replied. "I can sign on your behalf. I'm just showing you as a courtesy." "A courtesy?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "You're stealing my house and calling it a courtesy?" "I'm not stealing anything. The money will go into a trust for your care. You'll be taken care of, Mom, better than you are now." "I don't want your care. I want my home." "That's not your decision anymore." I looked at him, this man I'd raised, and felt nothing but contempt. "Your father would be ashamed of you." His face went pale. "Don't," he said quietly. "Ashamed," I repeated, "of all of you." He left without another word. That night, I sat in Frank's chair and thought about giving up, about signing the papers, moving into Meadowbrook, letting them win. It would be easier. I was so tired, and the fight seemed endless. But then I thought about Frank, about the life we'd built in this house, about every memory embedded in these walls. And I thought about the roses in the garden, the ones I'd planted with my own hands, that bloomed every summer in shades of red and pink and yellow. I thought about the porch where I'd watched my children grow up, where I'd held my grandchildren when they were babies, where I'd sat with Frank on warm evenings and talked about everything and nothing. I couldn't let it go, not like this. The next morning, I called Martin Beck. "I want to fight the guardianship again," I said. "I don't care how long it takes or how much it costs. I want my rights back." "Dorothy," he said gently, "I admire your determination, but you need to understand the odds. Overturning a guardianship is extremely difficult." "I don't care about the odds. I care about my home." There was a pause. Then, "All right, let me see what I can do." He filed a motion to reconsider, arguing that the guardianship was unnecessary and that I was fully capable of managing my own affairs. We gathered more evidence, video of me cooking, cleaning, managing my daily life without assistance, testimony from friends and neighbors, a new evaluation from a different psychiatrist, one I chose, who concluded I was competent. But before the motion could be heard, something unexpected happened. In early June, I received a phone call from a lawyer I didn't know. His name was Thomas Brennan, and he worked for a firm in Philadelphia. He asked if he could meet with me, said it was important. I was suspicious, assuming Michael had sent him, but something in his tone made me agree. He came to my house the next day, a tall man in his 50s, with graying hair and a serious expression. We sat in the living room, and he got straight to the point. "Mrs. Walsh, I represent the estate of your late husband's brother, Edward Walsh." I frowned. "Frank's brother? Edward died 20 years ago." "Yes, but his estate was never fully settled. There were some complications, legal disputes that have only recently been resolved. As part of the settlement, assets have been distributed to remaining family members. You're one of them." "I don't understand." Thomas opened his briefcase and pulled out a file. Edward was a shrewd investor. He owned properties, stocks, various holdings that appreciated significantly over the years. After his death, his estate went into litigation because of disputed claims from business partners. That litigation has finally concluded, and the remaining assets are being distributed. You're entitled to a portion. "How much?" I asked, though I almost didn't want to know. "Approximately $2.4 million. The room spun. I gripped the arms of the chair, trying to process what he'd just said. "That can't be right." "It is. I have all the documentation here. Once you sign the paperwork, the funds will be transferred to you." "But the guardianship," I said slowly. "Michael controls my finances." Thomas's expression hardened. "The guardianship applies to your existing assets. This is new income, a separate matter. Technically, it should be disclosed to your guardian, but there are legal arguments for keeping it separate, especially if you challenge the guardianship. Can I do that?" "With $2.4 million, Mrs. Walsh, you can do a lot of things." We talked for over an hour. He explained the legal options, the ways the money could be structured to protect it from the guardianship, the steps I'd need to take. By the time he left, my head was spinning, but for the first time in months, I felt something like hope. I called Martin Beck immediately. "I have money," I said. "A lot of money. And I want to use it to end this guardianship." There was a pause. Then, "Tell me everything." Over the next few weeks, Martin and Thomas worked together to build a new case. The inheritance changed everything. I was no longer a vulnerable elderly woman with limited resources. I was a wealthy woman with the means to hire the best lawyers, the best doctors, the best experts. We filed a motion to terminate the guardianship, arguing that it was based on outdated information and that I was fully capable of managing my affairs, especially with professional support. Michael found out, of course. He showed up at my house furious, demanding to know where the money came from. "It's none of your business," I said calmly. "I'm your guardian. Everything is my business. Not this. This is mine." He threatened to sue, to freeze the funds, to drag me back to court. I let him yell. Then, when he was done, I said quietly, "You took my house, Michael, or you tried to. You humiliated me, controlled me, treated me like I was nothing. But I'm not nothing, and you're not going to win." He left, slamming the door behind him. The hearing for the motion to terminate was held in July. This time, I had a team. Martin Beck, Thomas Brennan, a new psychiatrist, a financial advisor who testified about my ability to manage my assets. We presented a comprehensive case, showing that I was competent, capable, and had the resources to live independently with appropriate support. Michael's lawyer fought hard, arguing that the guardianship was still necessary, that the inheritance didn't change my medical situation. But the judge, a different one this time, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, seemed skeptical. She questioned Michael directly, asked why he felt his mother couldn't manage her own affairs when she clearly had the means to hire help. "It's not about money, Your Honor," Michael said. "It's about her safety." "And yet," the judge replied, looking at him over her glasses, "it seems that many of your concerns could be addressed with hired assistance, which your mother can now afford. Why is guardianship necessary?" He didn't have a good answer. On July 28th, the judge ruled in my favor. The guardianship was terminated, my rights were restored, I was free. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high, Martin Beck beside me, and I didn't look back at Michael or Claire or David, who sat in stunned silence. The sale of my house was canceled. The couple who'd planned to buy it sued Michael for breach of contract. But that was his problem, not mine. I hired a lawyer to deal with it, someone Thomas Brennan recommended, and I never heard the details. I didn't care. I used the inheritance wisely. I hired a housekeeper, a gardener, a part-time nurse who came by twice a week to check my blood pressure and make sure I was taking my medication. I updated the house, new roof, new plumbing, fresh paint inside and out. I set up a trust to ensure it would be maintained after I was gone, left to a local charity that preserved historic homes. My children wouldn't see a cent of it. Michael tried to reconcile, called me in August and said he was sorry, that he'd been trying to do what he thought was best. I listened in silence. When he was done, I said, "Goodbye, Michael," and hung up. Claire sent an email. A long rambling thing, about family and forgiveness. I deleted it without responding. David didn't reach out at all, and I was okay with that. I spent the rest of that summer in my garden, nurturing my roses, sitting on the porch in the evenings with a book and a glass of iced tea. Susan came over often, and we laughed about how I'd turned the tables, how the children who tried to take everything had ended up with nothing. In September, Margaret from church organized a small party for my 80th birthday. Just a few friends, cake and coffee in my living room. We talked and laughed, and someone made a toast to second chances, and I felt surrounded by real family, the kind you choose, not the kind you're born into. That evening, after everyone left, I sat in Frank's chair and looked around at my home, my beautiful, imperfect, hard-won home. The walls were the same, the floors creaked in the same places, the afternoon light came through the windows at the same angle it always had. Everything was the same, and yet everything was different. I thought about my children, about the people they'd become, and I felt sadness, but not regret. I'd done my best with them. Their choices now were their own. I thought about Frank, wished he was there to see how it all turned out, to laugh with me about the absurdity of it. But maybe in some way he was. His brother's money had saved me. A gift from beyond the grave. A lifeline I hadn't known existed. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at Maple Street, at the tall trees and the cracked sidewalks and the houses where I'd lived my entire adult life. The streetlights were coming on, casting warm pools of light against the gathering dusk. I was home. I was free. I was exactly where I belonged, and nobody could take that away from me ever again.